Reason 365,422 to support us on Patreon. We had our account locked. Our server was locked, and turned out it was time to pay the bill, and it was a doozy. And under normal circumstances, it would have caused quite an issue, but because of our patrons, we had money in our account, and we were able to quickly move that over, pay our dues, and get our account turned back on to where you really didn't notice, I don't think, that our account had been frozen. We appreciate our patrons, so please head over to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit and support us at any level to keep the lights on. Literally, figuratively, keep the lights on. And we appreciate those of you who do. Thank you so much.
Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing returning guests and friends of the show, writers Stuart Moore and Fred Harper. They are the amazing creative team on this new miniseries called Highball. Now, it is a 5-part limited series from Ahoy Comics magazine. The first issue comes out on September 7th, and issue 2 comes out on October 12th. Now, please note that this is for mature readers, and I'm going to let you guys know I can't read this because I'm very immature.
Oh, well.
Exactly, yeah. Jeez. I was like, I can't even hear that. You know?
Okay, so Stuart and Fred, welcome back to the show. How are you guys doing today?
No, we're good. I think I'm good. How are you, Fred?
Collectively, I think we're batting pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, if you put it all into a calculator, into a computer and average it out.
Yeah, I like looking at it like in about 10-year stretches, and it's is doing pretty. I might not even remember this part. You know what I mean? It's so good.
So, okay, so listeners, you guys are in for a treat. We're gonna just have fun in this episode. We're just gonna talk about the comic Highball. Now, before I really get into the interview and start talking about that, I just want to, for new listeners, I've interviewed Fred, with writer Paul Constant last year, and that was in episode 676, and it was to promote Snelson Comedy is Dying, and that trade paperback is out in stores if you guys want to check that out. And I've interviewed Stuart basically back in June, and that is episode 742 if you guys want to check that out as well. We talked about the Wrong Earth Purple from Ahoy Comics. So again, if you guys get a chance, please check out those 2 interviews, with Fred and with Stuart. And also I also want to point out too, I just found out this morning, and Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Wrong Earth, the one-shots is collected and comes out, I believe, sometime in October, if I remember correctly. I think I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, October 12th.
Okay,
that's right.
All right, sorry, Stuart, I didn't mean to throw that curveball at you both. Like,
no, I got my schedule right here. I'm all ready. It's actually the same day as Highball number 2.
Oh, okay, all right. Also to listeners, I just want to point out too that Stuart and Fred recently worked on the Wrong Earth Purple one-shot from Ahoy Comics. Now, that issue came out back in May. I read it. I loved it. I love the Batman 89 vibe to it. And more importantly, I couldn't believe I saw a nice little reference of Zima in that issue.
Yeah, that book too, I want to mention, that is in the trade paperback we were just talking about. That's part of the Wrong Earth, the one-shots trade paperback.
So, and then I want to give a big shout out to Hannah Bahedri of Superfan Promotions for setting up this interview. Hannah, thank you very much. Do you guys want to add anything to that?
Oh, cheers to Hannah. We're gonna have to name a drink after her somewhere.
We love Hannah, and if you're a fan of Hannah, or if you want to be a fan of Hannah, keep an eye on the back pages of Highball number 2. That's all I'll say right now.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, before doing this, before I set up this interview, I did my research. Actually, I stole some information from the article in the Comics Beat website. Then that article that was dated on July 18th. It was titled "Exclusive Behind the Scenes with Stuart Moore and Fred Harper's Highball," and it was written by Joe Grunwald. And the commentary was by you, Stuart. I highly recommend listeners to check out that great article because it also shows some of Fred's early designs and also designs that he used for the series, and it's great. I love it. It was really nice, Fred. Just seeing just all the behind the scenes stuff, and that was nice.
Yeah, it's really fun to think about, because the way Stuart presented the concept, and then the more we talked about it, it was like, so it was open-ended enough where I could play around with like so many influences throughout the years of science fiction,
Yes.
like visuals, and so it's like a very interesting like exploration, like I'm like, wow, I get to exercise that part of my brain that I usually don't get to access, I'm like, well, I don't need that creative part as much in these other things because they're more conventional. And now I've got these like a whole new world to create, and it was like, wow, I can do anything. Oh shit, it's almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuart, I'm going to ask, do you want to add anything to what Fred said?
No, except he's done a beautiful job of it, and I think we'll get into some of the details as we go along. But yeah, and I'm glad people got to see the early sketches. They're not quite reflective of the way the actual book looks. So people should keep that in mind, like as they pick it up.
Yeah, it's like that's where we started.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually just throw out the first ideas just as a rule, like when you're trying to design something. And the sad part is I probably did like 3 or 4 other drawings before that just to show them guys, and then they're like, yeah, we got to throw these out. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
But some stuff came out pretty close right out of the gate, I think.
Yeah, I had a few things that I'm like were stubbornly stuck in my head, that I really wanted to do, with the characters that I had been thinking about for a very long time. But it's like Stuart came to me with his thing with the Highball concept already kind of figured out.
Yes.
And like my ideas, it weren't, they're just accumulated ideas over the years of when you look at science fiction, you go like, how do we get to this? How do you like when you're in Star Trek, like how do you get from where we're at right now to Star Trek, and you're like, who invented the thing that led to the thing that to the and so you end up with that process, and it's exciting to explore. So
well, you added a lot in the process. You added a lot of texture to it because you added a lot of sort of world building and rationale for why things work on the ship that I was too lazy to think about it all. Like I was more, and in all seriousness, I was probably more focused on the political situation in the galaxy and the individual characters. So yeah, it sort of became more than the sum of its parts, I think, as we both worked on it.
Absolutely, yes. So, yeah, we just like because the social commentary, the characters that reflects like what we're currently in today, and and it's like we're Stuart and I are pretty much on the same page, with and so you end up like, oh, I'm totally in. Let's do this.
I'm glad we're pretty much on the same page, because like I didn't ask you what you thought of whether you were a big cryptocurrency fan, for instance, before I started making fun of it all over the page.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally knew that guy as soon as you started like playing around with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know him.
You know him. Yeah, you know that guy.
Ironically, the character that I'm using as a reference for that my friend who I'm using as a reference for that that character who's really into the crypto. My friend really hates crypto. So he's like, all right, well, it's a character.
It's a character.
Okay, so I know we're slowly getting into it let me just kind of I'm just going to start getting to some questions already. Actually, before I start, so Highball, you guys already had now, according to the Ahoy Comics website, it is described as Guardians of the Galaxy meets the Hitchhiker's Guide. And also, too, I want to read another quote too from Derek Robertson, the co-creator of The Boys and current artist on Batman Fortress, that's out in stores right now. Now Derek has been quoted to say, if we took the current shit show that is humanity out into space this very minute, it would be no surprise that our hero would be Stuart Moore and Fred Harper's Highball. You know, a little bit of Futurama and a little bit of Red Dwarf and a whole lot of space booze. So how'd you guys get that quote from him?
Well, I've known Derek a long time. I worked with him on Transmetropolitan back in the day. Actually, I think I called and asked if he wanted to do a variant cover at one point, and he was too busy. But I got talking to him about it, and he offered to give a quote. So that was just really nice, and I knew it'd be up his alley. It's the kind of thing he likes.
Fred, did you want to comment on that?
Well, no, I only know him from afar, so that was all in Stuart.
Okay, so Stuart, I'm going to ask you this. So, for the listeners, can you tell us what the story is about?
Well, it's basically on the surface, it's about the best pilot in the Earth Space Corps, who can only hit the target when he's dead drunk. Not to spoiler it too much or anything, but as you go along, as the story goes along, it sort of becomes clear that that's not the only reason he drinks. That he's surrounded by a sort of a web of corruption. Earth's government is controlled by some aliens who are really kind of disgusting and pitiful, but they're just such bullies that they sort of like wormed their way in, and we just kind of let them run everything. And that's the Mentalk. So it's kind of like on the surface, it starts off as almost a farce where it's a pretty goofy story at the beginning, but hopefully it's got a little more going on under the surface. And as it goes along, like there's plenty of action and space adventure, and hopefully plenty of humor. But there's something a little, hopefully, I just hope people get to know Highball a little more as it goes along, the character, and that he becomes real to them and they sort of sympathize with his struggles. If that's not too pretentious, I don't know.
Yeah, that's always the challenge of having a character that's supposed to be he's marked as the lead guy, and so a lot of times what I've always done in the past with other like shows, like say Seinfeld, for example, it's a show about Seinfeld, but then everybody ends up identifying with like this other character or this other character. And then we have that in Highball. We have the other characters that maybe you identify more with this or that. Like and Highball himself is like he's designed to be the lead guy, and so you're almost have to overcome other people's problems with the lead guy, character. He's kind of initially like the focus was he's more like I'm that dude that like everybody loves, and I get all the privilege and everything, and so you have to overcome that natural resentment that people might have of that. And
I would say there is a level on which the book is about white male privilege, as Snelson was too, the last book you worked on, in a very different way.
Yeah, just
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
All the comics that I met, that like look at Snelson, they'll either identify with it or they're like, they'll be like, I can't believe you did this, and, why did you do this? You hate me or something, and I'm like, no, it's just a thing, an observation. But it's similar with Highball, in that he kind of has that, they're like, how did he talk his captain into like taking the entire crew to this other planet, or how, why does he get to drink constantly. And while
Yeah,
he's
why
on
do they let him do that?
they all seem fine with that, you know. It's like space is very liberal, apparently. Yes, we're down with alcoholism. But
Sorry,
only for a good cause, and if you're productive.
So Fred, already you've mentioned about, we've already, Stuart and Fred, you guys mentioned that Highball is, he gets drunk and he seems to do, actually he's supposed to be, when he gets drunk, he does better, So, but Stuart, I want to ask you, where did you, because I've read where you got your idea for a story from. So for the listeners, can you tell us, where did you get the idea of this story?
Well, I was out. I have told this story, but I was out. Drinking one night, quite late, with a friend who's actually involved with Ahoy Comics. Though I haven't asked him if he wants me to reveal who it is, so I probably shouldn't. But we were just playing darts, and it was in the old Fred, you might know the place, the old Grassroots Tavern. It's not there anymore, on St. Mark's Place, and
right.
There were two dartboards in the back, like separated. And it was us and a bunch of NYU students, bunch of girls, just like throwing darts. And my friend, there were a lot of us there, maybe like 8 or 10 of us there taking turns. And my friend, the more he drank, the more bullseyes he hit. Like he just got into some Zen zone where once the inhibitions went down, where he could just hit the bullseye every time. And I thought, you put that in outer space. That's a comic book. That's great.
No,
it's just itself.
I'm sorry, Fred. What was that, Fred? Sorry.
Oh, he just writes itself.
It just writes itself. Yeah.
Okay, so Stuart, I'm joking on this part. Your friend, did you notice what kind of beer he was drinking? Well, that improved his game. Like, was it a Bud Light, regular? Was it a regular Budweiser? Was it something on on tap? I'm joking on this, but
it would definitely have been Guinness, which tells you it's not an American. but yeah, it would have been Guinness.
I get better on Guinness too.
Yeah, Guinness is surprisingly, Americans don't tend to know this, but it's surprisingly low alcohol. Like it's about the same as drinking Bud Light, so you can keep going on it for quite a while. You can get a little glide going, I think.
Oh yeah.
I gotta remember that the next time. Okay.
Tips from the comics.
Yes. Okay. And then Stuart, and then I'll ask Fred. So Stuart, what was Tom's reaction when you told him the origin story of your for your like how you came up with Highball? What was Tom's reaction? It was like, like, wait, what? You wrote a story based on some guy improving his dart skills being drunk?
Tom and I are pretty in sync. He kind of got it right away, I think, or he humored me into saying he did. I try to be a little careful with Ahoy because I'm involved with it on so many levels. I didn't want to actually sell this book until I knew I could do it. So I sat down and wrote the first script before I asked them to approve it. And I also wanted to make sure that I could fit a decent pilot story into 20 or 22 pages, as it turned out. So I kind of wanted to prove to myself that it worked as much as anything. So I did that. So Tom and Hart Seeley, the publisher, had that in front of them at the point where they okayed it. We don't normally do that. Normally people do proposals or a little partial script or something. But I just, like I said, I wanted to make it work for myself, and I wanted to show those guys what I really wanted to do with it.
Oh, okay. And then Fred, I'm going to ask you, like when Stuart told you the story of, like the origin story of how Highball came about, what was your reaction?
Oh, I just was like, sorry, I wasn't at that bar.
I am too.
Yeah. I was like, oh, you should have called me. But yeah, it was. It's like one of those. When I got the script, and then just the one line in it was just grabbed me, and I was like, oh, I want to do this because it's in my wheelhouse of what I want to do. And I was like, yeah, I have to, I totally get it. Like the political scene, the whole social structure of the book. And I was like, yes, I see it already. So
Yeah, and I was so happy when you told me you'd been wanting to do a science fiction book for a long time, because you haven't really done a full out like space adventure thing like this before. But I was glad you were excited about that.
Yeah, because I love science fiction, and I've never, I just love science fiction movies, and I like exploring the physics of all those things, and the possibility of them actually being real someday. And then when you were approaching it, I'm thinking like, oh, I want to be influenced by like H.R. Geiger, and this is gonna be my fifth element.
Very cool. Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna do, this is the fifth element, and I'm gonna do all the design from Geiger to Mobius and all those, all my favorite heroes of science fiction. And then I also didn't know if it was going to be as humorous as like some of the other Ahoy books, but then I'm like looking at the Ahoy books, I'm like, most of them are kind of sarcastic, and most of them are politically like commentary, like, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah. And again, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the script, was I knew it was going to be probably closer to farce than a lot of things I've written, and I just wanted to see if it would hang together. I wasn't sure, and I think it does, and your work grounds it really nicely.
Yeah, I'm trying to embrace the feeling of disbelief in a comic, like it's a comic. We don't have to be super realistic about it. I mean, we're borrowing from realism so people know what we're doing, but also like just to be able to go, yeah, well, he just hit himself in the dart and magically, like in the preview of that issue that you saw, he hits his hand with a dart and he's bleeding in space. So it's like, oh, okay. Suddenly, what do you do when that happens? It's like everybody's just like, oh yeah, that just happened. The reaction isn't necessarily a real reaction. Like if you were in the military, like, oh, we're going to go to the infirmary or wherever. It's no, he's going to handle it right here in the bar. And I think that that first issue kind of establishes, some of the fun, the playing with reality and
Yes.
So I hope I didn't.
Fred, I'm sorry, Stuart. Did you want to add something? Sorry.
No, that's cool.
So Fred, I'm gonna ask, so how did you get this awesome assignment? How did you team up with Stuart? I mean, I know you guys worked on the Wrong Earth Purple one shot. But yeah,
I think it was more right place, right time, and then Stuart asked me. I just have like, yeah, I'm right here.
Yeah, purple came out so well. I jumped at the chance.
It was fun to work with Stuart, and then but my only reluctance was I was moving at the time, and I knew I was going to be moving. It was like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. So I don't know how much of a nightmare, and I lived in fear that your fingers were going to be crushed under some like giant pile of boxes or drywall. You were removing drywall and all this stuff. Don't do that with your cans, man. I was juggling chainsaws. And, I don't know why I was doing that while I was renovating, but I was like,
just happens.
Yeah, it was my fear too, actually. I was like, I'm gonna twist my leg off and smash my hands, and so but fortunately I've always been, I will twist my leg off before I break my hands, if given a choice.
Priorities.
Yeah, I have priorities.
We're already talking about some of the characters. So Stuart, we already talked about Highball. So Stuart, I'm gonna start with you. Like, can you like talk about who are some of your characters in the series? Because we know about Highball already.
Well, we talked about Highball. He's got a couple of fellow pilots. There's a guy named Chuck who will become important as the series goes along, and all the pilots have these like Battlestar Galactica style call signs, like Highball is Highball.
Mhm.
There's one named Buzzy.
Yes.
And Chuck's is just Chuck. Like he's just they just call him Chuck.
Yes.
But Chuck is a guy. He's the guy who's Highball's gateway into the sort of dark web world of crypto as it exists, like several hundred years in the future.
Mhm.
And Chuck, I think of Chuck as a guy with all who's he understands all the problems and he has all the wrong solutions. Like he knows everything that's wrong with Earth's government, with the way everything's being run, with the way the Space Corp is being administered.
Yeah.
But all he can come up with to try and solve this is these ridiculous get-rich-quick schemes that inevitably get him and eventually Highball into a lot of trouble. Buzzy is the other one. She just wants to be a pilot. She's like the only person who knows what the hell they're doing in the whole thing. They have their superior officer is a woman named Tac Tac, who was a pilot herself, understands what they're going through. She's really caught in the middle. She's almost the hero of the series, though she's got her own problems that we see heavily in issue 2. And there's a whole mystery around there's a guy named Zero who's the second in command, who's running functionally running the ship, and he's just a weasel. He's just a worm. And there's a mystery of the captain. The captain never comes out of her office. And they try and coax her out every once in a while, and it doesn't seem to work. But that might pay off. It might not. I don't know. I won't reveal that right yet.
Okay. And then let's see. Fred, how did you come up with the character designs for like Tac Tac, Zero, especially Zero, because I saw it in the Comics Beat article. Zero kind of, now correct me if I'm wrong, but he looks a little plumpy. And
yeah, well, I was like going with the character of the impression I got from the characters and how they behave.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, I want to make this guy with a disappearing chin, like you can't really tell, where his chin starts after his bottom lip, I don't know, I was just playing around with how far I could push that. And also, it's like kind of a spoof on Star Trek in a way, like how everybody has these nice form-fitting costumes. They're always in shape, to wear those costumes. And I'm like, well, I know a lot of people, and most of them are not in shape, and as they get older. So like this guy, he still has to wear the uniform though, and so they haven't figured, maybe in the future they have a pill to give him something like, here, this will make you look human. But no, they have him like, I just wanted to play with a guy that's fallen apart, that used to be in shape, or might have at one time been in, younger, youthful.
Yeah. It also fits in with the idea that, and I didn't really put this together, but it fits in with the idea that this is kind of a military operation. It's on the surface, it's a military operation, but there's really something else going on, and that means it might not hold the crew to quite the rigorous standards of physical fitness that you would expect from, say, the Marine Corps. We don't want to be fat shaming here either. Like that's not really that's not the game at all. He's just a character. He's just
it's kind of that realism that you bring into something, because you're like, no, realistically, there's things like this that like people age, and nobody really. You could spend like a whole series exploring all the problems and adventures or whatever happens as I age, and so as like personally as I get older, I've been thinking about how I age and everything. So I've been like, oh, I gotta I gotta be careful about that now, and like it's like one of those backstory things that you can bring into this that you don't need to know about that. For the it's just like that's the character, and I wanted everybody to look distinctly different because they're all wearing basically the same uniform,
right?
And I don't even know what that, I imagine is like he's got a design things like everybody kind of has a skull cap on these, you know, like for their hair. Like I figure hair in space,
Mm-hmm.
zero gravity is going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And so if you have like a skull cap you wear, and as like you can use it as communication, you can, you know, it's like
Yeah.
I'm always reading science fiction stuff. So, you know, like the hair can be like a hologram, or it can be like it's like you know, a really advanced LED thing. So
I just realized you set that up where they could communicate that way. And I have like no scenes in the entire series where anybody has to hail anybody else, except when they're on the bridge. Like that's the only time. So like I didn't use that at all.
Just like
maybe next time.
Yeah,
maybe in
I
the
went with
sequel.
the mysteriousness that like they have his body stats and readings on
Right.
from the other side of the universe. And and I'm like, man, you know, he's infected with some kind of nanotechnology. Like,
Yeah.
Forever, you know.
That's what I assumed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I went with it. So I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of, yeah, I can see that, you know. But I also saw that, like, one of the things that I would have done, it would have liked to incorporate in the story is how there could be messages on their back of their heads, like, you know, like back off, and you know, like they could have, or like I'm in a bad mood, and you just see clouds on their head, and you know, like a cloudy day,
Kinda.
or you know, like
Or they could sell advertising.
Yeah,
They could do that too. You know?
and like that's where I feel like, yeah, it could really go with that. You know? So that's another idea I had for a science fiction book, like was a chase scene where like the bad guys are chasing the good guys or whatever, and as the good guys are running, they have to like go to another section of the city, and it's called off. But in order to pass through a door, you have to sing a happy jingle. You know, so you got that situation going on where they're shooting at them, and they're like, I like creamy puffs.
Well, that's kind of similar to the Mentok story in issue 2, where in order to get from one place to another in the Mentok space station, they have to solve little puzzles on the doors. It's like being in some Mensa nightmare, like this, like this the Masonic Lodge of Mensa, where you're not allowed to do anything unless you show how goddamn smart you are in the most shallow way possible at every turn. So that was the idea there.
Sorry.
Guess how much hand has the shiny object in it? Like, I don't know. Like, yeah. So.
I'm sorry. So Stuart, you mentioned the Mentox.
Yeah.
Now I had to look up the meaning of the word because I just wanted to make sure it was so. The Mentox, is it you know, was there a reason why you specifically call that race the Mentox? Did you? You know, was it did you just pull it out from the dictionary, or?
I don't remember where I got the name, but the deliberate connotation, it's sort of like Mensa, which I just said, but it's basically they think they're really smart, like they're and everything, every part of the image they project is designed to tell you, hey, we're really smart, so we should be running your government, we should be running your military, when really they're just they're not smart. It's like Donald Trump calling himself a stable genius all the time, and you know, like but they convince enough people that they're able to get control of things, like and it's partly because we humans are just kind of lazy when you come down to it a lot of the time. Like we don't always take care of business. We just sort of let people like come in and run over us. And that's pretty much the situation with the Mentok. Like if you look at the situation coldly, as I hope the reader coming to it fresh will, you'll think there's no way you should let these people run anything, you know, but humanity has sort of gradually done it. And there's a backstory involving a war. We were on one side of it with them, and we sort of made an alliance. But really it was just the path of least resistance.
Yeah. And then Stuart, before I ask you a question, Stuart, I just wanted to go over, because you mentioned the space core, but it's not space cores or something, because I know there was because in the article there's an S missing at the end.
Yes, that's a point. That's a plot point. And it goes to what I was talking about, where it's supposed to be a military operation, but it's really more of an economic operation. And this is one of the things Highball has to learn as he goes along. I don't want to say much more because it's kind of a thing near the end of issue 1. But that's part of the progression of the story. That's part of what's going on behind the scenes.
And then Fred, I'm going to go back to you, and Stuart, just jump in, because there was one question that I know you were talking about the hair, the hologram, on the head and stuff. But Fred, I wanted to ask you, where did you come up with the idea of giving Highball spiky orange hair?
I love that hair, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of my homage to, like, say, the Futurama character, and and stuff like that, where I'm like, I kind of, it's he's distinct enough, and there, I initially I'm like, they're all going to be in the same uniform, so like, how do you distinguish who's who from a distance? So I always take that standpoint of designing a character to, like, oh, okay, you're going to recognize him in a long shot and a close up.
Yes.
So I try to kind of approach it that way, and I wanted Highball to be, he's supposed to be special. So like everybody else wears a skull cap, men and women. He's got one with actual dimension to his hair, and I thought, he's always going to stand out no matter what I do, and when I color him for the covers, I've played around with the idea that, of my concept of what his hair actually is, which is a hologram, really, with a LED, like super, like, thousands of LEDs per screech.
That's really what it looks like. Like, it's got it's almost like it's illuminated in this bizarre pixel way with a million pixels or something. I was not able to successfully communicate that to the variant cover artists. I don't think I had to go. I did tell them all it's not hair, it's just, but the nuances are pretty.
It's not hair, it's whatever.
Not hair.
Because it really, it's like the possibilities are all over the place, and I do like playing around with that idea, but that could be like a whole, like, backstory thing that, like how did the hair, develop. But it shouldn't be a story. It should only be in the background, but as long as you know a little bit about it, it's enough.
Yep.
So Fred, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and Stuart, please feel free to chime in, because because I know, Fred, you said that you always wanted to do a science fiction story. One of the designs that I saw was something called, and correct me the pronunciation, Biter. It was Highball's one-seater ride.
It's Biter Ship. Yeah.
Biter Ship.
Yeah.
It looks like, when I saw the design of it, it looked like a futuristic speed buggy. Were you going for that idea, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I realize, like, I'm not like, I would be working in Hollywood if I could design really amazing spaceships.
Yes.
So I went with the more fun approach of, I'm going to use something familiar, kind of like a heavy metal, like the guy that did the floating taxis.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Heavy metal, and they were old, like Studebagers or something, some old car thing with no wheels that just floated. So I kind of went with a 74 Volkswagen, and I was like, that's going to be my basis for this ship, and I found all this reference. I have a toy Volkswagen that I can model and take different shots and angles of it. And then, of course, he has to have a spoiler in the back, because it's space. But like, I feel like it was fun to play around with that, and no wheels, obviously, but he's got, like, the little jets to shoot him around. I tried not to overthink it, you
Mhm,
know.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it looks great. It looks great.
Relax and have fun, and you know, but where the Volkswagen has the engines in the back,
Yes.
so you end up
Right.
like you can put the cockpit right where
Mhm.
a normal engine would be, and that gives you the opportunity to look out,
Mhm.
and there's ambiguous space in the back, so you might be able to go in the back where the other stuff is.
So you're saying that the 74 Volkswagen Beetle is the most space-worthy car
Totally.
that the planet Earth has yet designed.
Exactly. It's
Because
right
the engine's in the back. So
yeah. All we have to
Makes
do
sense.
is look at it again and go, we just gotta like patch a few holes, and
it's just logic. I get it.
yeah. It's like if you
Now the rest is just engineering. Yeah, it's just engineering. Yeah, just work it out.
That's all that is. Yeah.
All right. Fred, I'm going to ask you another question, and Stuart, I'm going to ask you to chime in on this one.
Okay.
There is a race called, oh God, I'm going to try to pronounce this. And Stuart, you guys know what this is. The Shikiri?
I designed. I originally, I don't know if I ever even told Fred this, but when I was originally thinking about Highball, I was thinking about it as a scripted podcast, and I sort of worked out how to pronounce that for myself as sort of a joke, and now I can't remember. It involved a bunch of glottal sounds, like it was something like shikari, like, but it was like it went up and down, and it was her race that was that she came from. These are the bird people, the warrior bird people, and her race was the but I can't do it anymore. I'd have to practice it again.
Oh yeah, you have to grow up in that culture to get it right.
By the way, Pyre hates those names. Tom Pyre hates those names. He every note, he gives me almost no notes on Highball, but every time he says, can you change that? That's like really annoying to read. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll change. And then I don't change
it. You cross off an E at the end, right?
Yeah.
It is fun. I mean, like if it ever takes off, now it's like I'm like, you have to keep that if it's a movie. It's
No, I totally worked out how to pronounce it once, and I think I have long notes on it to myself somewhere. But I again, it would take me like a day to learn how to do it again.
Yeah.
So
I was like playing around with the idea of I'm trying to teach myself Spanish and Greek right now.
Wow.
On the Duolingo. So I was like, oh yeah, I gotta get that thing in my throat, with there's certain letters that I'm like, maybe I could bring that into that word, and pronounce Sharia or Sharia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could bring that in somehow.
I have to copy and paste it every time too, because I can't remember how many apostrophes there are and stuff.
How many E's?
How many E's? Yeah, I don't know. But they're the sort of badass warrior people in the book, and Highball has a run-in with one of them in issue 1 that kind of is the kind of kickoff point for everything that happens after that in the series.
Yes. And then Fred, I wanted to ask you, so Stuart, I know we already talked about this is the bird race warriors. So Fred, how did you come up with the design for this race? Did Stuart give you notes, or?
Yeah, he gave me some basic, like they're kind of this race has like they're kind of a bird race people, but he didn't say how human or not they should look.
No, I didn't put a lot of work into it.
And I like going, okay, if they're going to be alien, I want to make them alien.
Yes.
Yep.
Dinosaurs too, and going,
yes,
dinosaur kind of approach. And then I found these tropical birds that have these weird things on their heads that are just, like horns of some sort. And I'm like, I'll throw that on there, so that way their close-up will be distinct, and their eyes are not going to be traditional eyes, and like they're I wanted, like, if we could explore it, they're just so deep you could go with it, and
they look amazing. They look amazing. And like one thing you did that I loved was I had the vague idea they had, they're warriors, they have various kinds of primitive weaponry and stuff.
Yes.
And I really wasn't thinking much past Hawkman, to be honest, and I suggested one of them have a mace, and you made it this organic mace that comes from their planet. It's like it's made out of
That's
is it a
like a seed pod? That's
seed pod? Yeah, on a
and it's
stem
on a
sort of.
cord. Yeah,
Yeah.
you break the branch off, and like now it's a mace. You know.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, that was great.
I feel that was my little bit of like a Klingon kind of culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they always try to bring some ancient Klingon thing from their like home planet, and then
Yes.
like, dude, everybody else has lasers and swinging an axe, like you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I tried to think about things as much as I could.
No, but you know, like Stuart said, when I saw that drawing, I love it where it's like their weapons are organic. You know, it's part of it's, you know, whatever is growing around, they you know, and that's great. Now I'm joking on this part. Now we know Highball drinks, you know, so forth. So, and Stuart and Fred, did you guys have fun making up your own alcoholic beverage names for the comic series? Did you guys have any fun doing that?
I mostly refer to existing ones, mostly for shorthand. Like there's one point where he's drinking a big thing labeled Bahama Mama, which I just thought was sort of funny. But I don't think we've actually made. Oh yeah, we do in issues 4 and 5. Like we get into he starts drinking a concoction called a Hot Jupiter, which is pretty funny. That sequence you drew where they have the hot Jupiters and and they spit them out, like it's just too strong for them. That made me laugh out loud when I saw it on the page. That was wonderful. But that's issues 4 and 5. We'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, it's a lot of that's really fun. But I was like thinking of beer. I have some beer names here. I have the Easy Space Debris. That would be a good one, or a Meteor Malbec.
I like that.
Sunspot IPA. These actually might exist. Actually,
some like my local other half, my local brewery has one called Laced in Space, which I like quite a bit.
Probably just go there and see what happens.
I know what'll happen, but
oh, I got my big one is the Higgs Highball. There we go. Higgs boson.
I like that. Yeah.
So I just was playing around with ideas just for your podcast here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe they'll appear
Exclusive.
later. Background.
Yeah, there should be a shelf in the bar in issues.
Yeah. That's I'm doing the bar scene right now, so I can put that in the background. That would be
nice.
Perfect. Then you can say, they were premiered here, right?
That's right.
Put on the program.
So Fred, I'm going to ask, actually, I'm going to ask, please give a shout out to the rest of the creative team on this comic, on the series.
Oh yeah, Lee is like amazing. He's really got
Lee Lowridge. Yeah.
On the colors are, like we worked with him before on other things and did Snelson, I think, and
he did Snelson.
And he was, but he does so much. I'm like, wow, it's really work with somebody who knows what they're doing, and you can actually talk to the guy. He's awesome.
Yeah, and Rob Steen is a letterer, and he does most of the Ahoy books, and he's great to work with too. He's one of the most I've known him for years, but he's also just a really good, straightforward, straight ahead letterer, and he's I don't know, he makes the books incredibly smooth and fun to read.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll mention the variant cover artist just really quickly. The first one has a cover by David Rubin, who's an up and comer who he just did a book called Cosmic Detective that was a Kickstarter, and I recommend that book really highly. It's wild Jack Kirby type stuff. And the second one has one by John McCrae, who did the book Hitman with Garth Ennis years ago, and is like always around. And he's he really outdid himself on that one. And the third one is a new artist named Dan Shonak, who's done a bunch of interior art illustrations for Ahoy over the last few years, and he came up with a really funny idea for it too. So those all came out pretty nice, I think.
Okay, so Fred and Stuart, and you guys can, because I'm slowly wrapping this up. The obvious question, will we see more of Highball in the future?
Oh, after this 5 issues?
Yes.
Well, that'll depend. That'll depend on how it sells. I would love to. I could write Highball all day.
All the space cadets who are here listening to this to buy 10 copies.
That's right.
And have their friends buy 10 more copies.
Yeah.
And
Get out your decoder ring.
yeah,
Yeah.
look for all the. You can have like compare notes and see if you find any extra beer names in the background.
Right.
Yeah, well, it'll be. We just need all the friends and people that like comics that like space adventures to buy the books, and you'll get more. You know, it's a really interesting.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Totally works that way. Yeah.
All right, so guys, I'm slowly wrapping things up. I'm sorry. Stuart, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any store signing appearances or con appearances in late September or in October?
I'll be around in some capacity at New York Comic Con. I'm not sure exactly how much I'll be there. We may have an Ahoy panel that we haven't heard back from the con yet about that. And if so, Fred and I will both be on it. We're both local to New York. I'm not traveling too much right now, but you know, pandemic starts letting up a little more. I might get out of the city a little more. But that's definitely New York Comic Con. I'll be around for that.
What about you, Fred?
Yeah, definitely New York Comic Con. I'll be floating around, you know, collecting COVID.
And back issues.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, I gotta get the whole set, you know, and so
all the variants.
Yeah, all the variants. So, and I kind of hope to go to the Baltimore convention. I see all my friends that I know in New York they seem to be going to Baltimore, and that sounds really interesting. And I'm just keeping my ears and eyes open for anything else that pops up. Sometimes I go to Forbidden Planet over here and buy comics in Manhattan. But like nobody knows when I'm going to do that. So
There you go.
I don't know when I'm going to do that, but yeah. So
all right. So Stuart, last question. I'm gonna start with you, Stuart. You know, before I wrap this up, do you have any closing words to our listeners?
No, I just hope I hope people try it. The Highball is also, I'm putting the issues together now, and it's also packed with extra stuff. It's got, every issue has comic strips by a guy named Chris Duffy, who's extremely talented. It's got extra stories in the back. It's got little previews, and it's got a little duty roster on the back cover that lets you know who everybody is. And I'm changing the text for that every issue, so it'll mix things up a little bit. So we're all, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're all taking a lot of care with this book. We're with every aspect of it, and I hope that shows, and I hope people like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fred, do you have any closing words?
Oh yeah, no, I feel like follow Ahoy on Twitter, and Ahoy Comics, and they all seem to do a real great, like Hannah is always posting there, and they're putting up all the information you need to know about like the latest things, and everybody when to go to your comic book place is, people seem to realize like, oh, I got to let them know. I won't want that. It won't just magically show up there. You have to have
Pre-ordering helps.
Yeah. So be annoying to your comic book guy, but
not too annoying.
Yeah, be polite. Bring him a cookie or and something like that. Because that's what helps us. And we really enjoyed doing this project, and would love to do more. But it's like, otherwise we'll have to come up with another thing to annoy everybody with. Well, the next character will be called ballish, you know, and we'll pick that book, and that's how we'll come up with the new one.
That's right. That'll be a hit.
Yeah.
All right. So Stuart and Fred, mahalo. Thank you very much for coming back on the podcast. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me another opportunity to interview you guys. I wish you guys all the success with Highball. And I also want to thank Hannah of Superfan Promotions for setting up this interview. So Hannah, thank you very much. If you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, please check out Highball. Again, it is a 5-part series from Ahoy Comics magazine. If you have no idea what, if you don't know, like about what Ahoy Comics magazine is, check it out. As Stuart and Fred has mentioned, it's like, like with Highball, it looks like almost like some type of a comedy book, but with what I noticed, and Stuart and Fred, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I noticed with Ahoy Comics is that it starts off one way where it's like, I think it's going to be, a comedy, but there's different layers under it. Like you said, there's a political satire to it. It's a commentary, Fred, like you said, it's a social commentary, what's going on nowadays. And that's the thing, what I really love about Ahoy Comics. So if you guys have never checked out Ahoy Comics, please, I recommend you guys check out Ahoy Comics. Again, Highball, first issue comes out on September 7th. Issue 2 also comes out on October 12th. And also that comes out on October 12th is the Wrong Earth trade that collects all the I believe it's the five one shots in that trade. So, and that I really highly recommend. I've read, because of my limited time, I only read about 2 or 3 of those one shots, and it's great. It's not.
Yeah, it's got work by Gail Simone and Mark Waid and
Yes.
Mark Russell, in addition to us. So yeah, it's a great little collection.
It is. Sorry, Stuart, I'm kind of going off the cuff because
No, it's okay.
I remember you recommended that I read Mark's one, Wrong Earth.
Confidence Man.
Yes,
Yeah.
And I remember you told me that was a dark story. I read it and I was like, oh my god.
Oh no, Mark Russell's Mark Russell.
Mark
Yeah,
Russell.
I
I'm sorry, Mark Russell.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark
Yeah,
Russell.
no, that's a very dark story. That might be the darkest story that Ahoy has published.
But it's a very good story. Again,
It's really good.
It's one level where thinking, they're doing it for good, and like, oh, we see what you guys are really doing,
Mm-hmm.
So, and also I want to thank Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listener. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Jason's always asking who his next interview should be. As you guys know, he does a fantastic job reaching out to these creators, their publicists, their publishers, various people coordinating these interviews and sharing them with us. And we appreciate it very much. But he's always trying to do more. He's always asking for the right mix to reach out for. So I'm opening it up to you guys. Just share on our social media.